Well, Tarik, Aimée, nice to have you guys here today. I'm glad to be able to sit down with you for a little bit. I was wondering if maybe you guys could just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your company and how you got into it.
Go first.
I'm Tarik Sedky. I'm a co-founder of Mockley. Aimée and I co-founded that business about 2.5 years ago. Launched it. The first products came out in January, February 2020.
2021.
2021?
Yeah.
2021. Yeah, 2021.
We are in that phase of like nobody can remember which
right.
from 2020 to 2023.
Right, it's 2023
Maybe in 2023
now.
time resumes its normal linear fashion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've been in market about 2 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm Aimée Sedky, co-founder with Tarik on Drink Mockley. We are also husband and wife.
Awesome.
So that has been something else that we're getting used to, a new type of partnership together, which has been fun and also challenging at times. And we're just really excited. We feel like we're definitely kind of on this precipice right now, and we just want to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, well, it's all about momentum, right? There's a lot of ups and downs in all these businesses, and I think you've got to keep kind of that constant, even keel sort of perspective to get through it. You mentioned that you guys were married. Is this your first business together, or have you done other businesses or anything before?
This is our first business together.
Okay. And, obviously there's lots of people that will immediately say, ooh, sounds scary, or you shouldn't do that. What do you say to some of those people? How's it been so far? What are the good things? And undoubtedly there's some challenges with that.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I mean, Tarik and I really have always worked well together as partners. I think that we lead a really beautiful family and have worked really hard at that. And we have a blended family. So, that came with some challenges, and we worked through that together. And we're really proud of the work that we did for our family. And so then now in this context of being a husband and wife partnership in business, it is interesting that we do approach business differently than we do our family, which seems to make sense, but it's something that I didn't really see moving in. I thought it was just going to kind of be like the way that we approach everything is going to be the way we approach this, but it is different. But I think that we are really respectful of each other and deeply like each other and love each other. So anything that may be off-putting, I think that we can really quickly deal with. What do you think?
I do. I think it's been positive for us to see sides of each other that we haven't really experienced so intimately until now, and also, a source of friction at times, right? I mean, I started an ad agency 10, 11 years ago in New York City, and so, I've been the boss of that from the very beginning, and, always, I've never actually shared that role until we launched Mockley. And so, there's been some, there's been some pain, I would say, as I sort of learn how to have a co-boss, and in a business. And I'm sure that the pain, I'm sure Aimée has felt that pain too, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. It's been very rewarding, surprisingly smooth, and hard to imagine doing it alone again. Now that I've done it with Aimée, the value of having somebody that I trust to work with and share ideas with, but also call me on my BS and say, hey, that really sounds like a terrible idea to me. That that's really valuable.
Yeah, I mean I think other than hiring, which we were talking about a little bit before we started, I mean, finding a true partner in anything, whether it's your life or in business, probably one of the hardest things. And then once you find a real partner in something, you never want to be without a partner, a great partner. It sets the bar very high. So it's good that y'all have found that. You mentioned that you thought it would be just the same as kind of running your household and family, but there's differences. What kinds of things have you done, do you think, that have made it go pretty smooth for the most part? Are there boundaries that you've kind of decided to set with one another, or do you divide up responsibilities? Like how has it worked for you, for people out there that are thinking about, doing something with their spouse? I think a lot of people want to would love to do that, but they're maybe afraid and they don't know techniques to help themselves.
The biggest thing for us is that we're able to see each other's value, and we also have done a lot of internal work ourselves, and we also know the things that we struggle with. So I think that's been something that's been really great, is that, we see what Tarik's strengths are, and a lot of times it is my weakness. Like, we kind of complement each other that way, and so he can take and run with all the financial stuff. I could not do that if my life depended on it, but then when it comes to all of kind of the relationships and the customer service kind of thing, that's clearly my jam. And, so I can just dive right into that. And like he said, because we have this, legacy of this 15-year, 18 years together relationship going into this, we really trust each other. And also, if somebody does misstep, we know that it comes from a place of, just accident, not really with any intention of doing something wrong, if
There's
that makes sense.
There's like a baseline trust level there.
Totally,
Sounds like.
which I think, so if you have a good marriage, I would say give it a try if you have a great idea together.
Well, if you have a good marriage, chances are you have some shared values and you know that it takes work.
Right.
And I think that it would be very difficult for us to succeed as business partners if Aimée and I saw the core business and the core opportunity and the essential positioning of the product vastly different. But we don't. We're very together in those sort of core elements, and I think that's made a huge difference too.
That's awesome. And I guess we should talk about that. We kind of jumped into some of the other things about running the business, but tell us a little bit about Mockley, Drink Mockley, your products. Where can people find them? What flavors? Because it really is an amazing product. Whenever I'm at a restaurant that has it, it's the first thing I order. And I think you're really hitting on just a trend that's going to be bigger and bigger. But tell everybody a bit about the company and the products.
Yeah, so Mockley is a ready-to-drink mocktail in a can. Currently, we are distributed all across Louisiana. We're found in Rouse's, Langenstein's, Canseco's, pretty much, all the independent and bigger grocery chains here. And then restaurants, Shia, La Petite Grocery, bars like DPA and Barrel Proof. So we really feel embraced by New Orleans. And our big internal joke is, if you can make it as a mocktail in New Orleans, you can make it anywhere.
That's a good point. This is a drinking town. So if people are going for Mockley, they might add some booze to it. But if one way or another, and those are some, pretty well-known restaurants. So
Yes.
that's incredible to get in there. Yeah. How did the idea for this come about? Like, what was the inspiration?
You did that.
I'm a non-drinker. I've been a non-drinker for over 30 years. And so when COVID struck, Aimée and I and one of our older daughters, my daughter, her stepdaughter, were out on the deck pretty much every afternoon about 4 o'clock. And you may recall it was like 50 days of beating down 75-degree sunshine. It was some of the most beautiful weather we've ever had.
It's true.
And day after day after day, about 4:30, they come out and they've got these gorgeous looking cocktails, and it's cocktail hour.
And Lucy was over the age of 21. I said this the other day, and everyone was like, was she 16? I was like, no, she was in college. Just FYI.
That's a good point.
I don't know how other people did, but
That's a good point.
It was very Euro style for us. Right. People
Exactly.
16 were drinking with their parents.
Just making it clear for the record.
That's so true. And each day I'm sitting there staring down yet another soda water and slab of grapefruit. And I thought, there's got to be something better than this. And we had begun to see ready-to-drink cocktails start to really take off. And we started looking around for a ready-to-drink mocktail of the sort that you would find at Shia or at some restaurant or bar that cares about its beverage and its beverages. And we didn't find anything. And so that was when we thought, hey, maybe there's something here. And we began to give it a whirl.
Yeah.
And it was, just to jump right into another topic, that we can talk about later. I've had ideas, you've had ideas, everybody's had, Aimée's had ideas. She's started businesses before. I've got a mentor and a friend, and I've bounced all of my ideas off of him over the years. This was the first time he said, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Let me know when you've gotten that a little bit further and we can talk about, an investment potentially. And it was the first time, literally, I mean, I've had a dozen ideas I've run by him, and this was the first time he said, actually, that does sound like a pretty good idea.
I think you're hitting on something. It's like you have to have, I think, to succeed in the startup business, the founders that I know that have been part of that journey to exit, they've always had one or many mentors that really, for the most part, sort of challenge them on their ideas. And I don't want to say discourage, because it's not ever discouraging, but they say, oh, what about this or that? And they help you think through the different things that work and don't work. And I find that for whatever reason, the entrepreneurs that have that or those sets of mentors end up succeeding. So I think that's great that, probably those ones that you didn't pursue, it's a process of elimination sometimes, and you get there. The other thing what I love, one of the things I love about y'all's product is there's some restaurants and bars, I think, that make mocktails or have them on the menu, but the bar staff isn't probably always trained on them, or not all of them keep the different ingredients that they need, like fresh and able to be, like made at the ready. So I sometimes they'll kind of like, half do it, or like use what's available, or just basically make you like a Shirley Temple or something.
Right.
So I think what's cool about Mockley is that it does seem to give the bar and restaurant customer crowd a way to, have a consistent, ready-made, awesome non-alcoholic alternative versus the other ones. But yeah, and I guess I didn't realize you were in that many stores. So maybe you can talk a little bit about like what was the journey like getting into bars and restaurants versus grocery stores and other kinds of venues.
Well, the bars and restaurants, that's how we started. So this was before we had signed on with Crescent Crown, our Louisiana distributor. And so I was literally just going like door to door. And again, like what we're saying, growing, I was from New Orleans, born and raised here, went to Sacred Heart. So I did have quite a good amount of people in my network that I just would send emails to. Hey, it's Aimée, we have this new beverage. It's a ready-to-drink mocktail. Would love to have you come sample it. And so I sent those emails out. Robert LeBlanc was one of the first people I sent an email to. And then my girlfriend, Maria, who's one of my best friends, Maria Zissis, she's the director of operations for BRG. So immediately she's like, obviously, we're doing this, and I'm putting it number one on the mocktail menu. And so that really, when we got on Shia, as the first spot on their mocktail menu, that gave it so much street cred and so much legitimacy that people really followed. I don't know if you feel that way.
I do. But also, I mean, like my mentor and friend and early investor and like all these other people, it was all fun and games until they tasted it, right? They were like, nobody was doing anything with this product until they tasted it.
Right.
And to your point about the bartenders and whatnot, the first batches Aimée and I were cooking up ourselves at the kitchen. Yeah. And they weren't very good. And so once again, we were like, there's got to be somebody who knows something more about it. So we started looking for a, phenomenal bartender, mixologist. And we found one in Jesse Carr, who has been head of beverage at some of the best and brightest restaurants and bars in town. Anyway, so he actually started helping us create commercially viable mocktails that came from his bartender, sort of beverage forward bartending experience, right? And so that's how we ended up with these sort of interesting but accessible, delicious but slightly complex beverages that had a great look, had a great aroma, and then immediately on tasting were just dynamite. And so the same investor that I told you about was all in, but he wouldn't give us a nickel until he actually tasted the stuff. And same thing with Maria or Octavio at BRG and those folks. But it really did begin with the product.
That's awesome.
I would say.
And so I mean, imagine, that's an interesting thing. Had you ever done that before, like scaling up kind of a prototype recipe and then finding bottlers and,
No.
How did you go about that process? Who led you through that? Or how did you
Wrong
figure it out?
and painfully.
Yeah, we got lucky. I just did like some really deep internet searches. Like I said, this was COVID. We were still all in lockdown quarantine. Tarik was running his agency in the guest house every day, and I was not homeschooling my kids and instead researching, mocktails and how to do this. And came across this great beverage architect out in California, Ocean Blue Innovations. And I reached out to a lot of people, but, Marty, who's the owner, just called me, and we just had such a great conversation. I was like, this is our guy. Like, I can just tell he's our guy. And sure enough, he really took amazing care of us. He and his food scientists. And, we went out to California and we would do tastings, but it took a solid 3 months, I would say, to develop our formulas.
Oh, yeah. It was COVID. And he said, okay, well, we'll do this by FedEx. And so literally we start shipping him Jesse's chilled beverages, which are probably 600 calories, would cost $14 a piece, and would last about 3 days. Yeah. And then he would create these things and literally FedEx us 3 cans, right? Of sort of iterative, variations of, one of these SKUs. And we were thinking, okay, well, this could take years, because the first batch we got back, we didn't really, we didn't like it
at all.
At all. And so the next thing he's like, okay, well, sometimes people come out here, but since it's COVID, it was like we were talking about doing it out of the parking lot, and literally starting to do iterations of our product right there out of the parking lots.
You mean like in a farmer's market, like you'd bottle it and just... see,
no, literally just at the beverage architect. He was sitting in we weren't allowed in their building, so they would come out with trays
so we
and give us the
going
taste.
Inside, right?
We give
exactly.
feedback. They'd go back in, sit at the bench, they'd recalibrate it.
What a crazy, that's insane.
As opposed to going into their conference room, there is literally one of those fast food restaurants where you're sitting outside and they just shuttle back and forth. But,
oh wow.
But one thing that Tarik hit on early is, we really cared about the taste. Like we just wanted to nail it on the taste. And so in this development process, we did try things like stevia and monk fruit and different stuff that, because people care a lot about sugar and calories and stuff. And, we kind of wanted to be in a zone for them. But at the end of the day, we just couldn't get something that tasted delicious, like the restaurant quality mocktail that we were going for. And so... that was part of the process too, is that we started out in that direction and then ended up just embracing that we were going to be real, all natural ingredients, but we are going to also, have real sugar be a part of the mix.
And we were advised early on, we sort of surveyed people, and everybody told us that if we could keep it under 100 calories per serving, we'd be okay. Yeah. And so, we got under, 80, 90 calories.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. There's a ton of flavor for that low of a calorie profile. So that's awesome. But I mean, it seems like that's a natural skill that you guys has to lean in on people who are sort of experts. And, I think more so with any product type companies, even software, there's sometimes a tendency for founders to, do it themselves or not rely on people, maybe not pay expensive people who have been there and done it before. And they end up having a much longer cycle of development in the product. And ultimately, I think they spend more. But do you guys, it seems like you did the right thing. You found somebody who's produced a lot of commercially successful stuff before, got some feedback. You had to compromise a little bit on maybe some aspirations for commercial success. But anything you've learned or would want other people to know if they were going to do this again?
I would really just say use your network and just as you're going through all you 20-somethings now, just really keep relationships in your life going. I think that one of the biggest successes that Tarik and I have had with Mockley is that, we both kind of have these diverse backgrounds. I met Tarik in New York, so I was in New York for about 13 years. He was in New York for longer, in LA, DC, all these places before then. So we've really built quite a nice, and very successful and very smart kind of group of people around us that, as soon as we started having these ideas, we would pick up the phone and call, how does this sound to you? And then when we got samples, how does this taste to you? And, really being open, I think, too, to hearing people's real feedback. So I think that that's something that is just very important. I don't know.
Yeah, and to your point, Mark, looking back, we wish we would have spent some money on some experts in production early on.
Yeah, that was a misstep.
We really missed that, and it set us back about a year and cost us a lot of money. We had no idea, and we really had no idea. And nobody told us. That was, that was the thing. Aimée and I sort of looked back at each other and were like, why didn't somebody sort of mention that this is a huge problem?
Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong at production. And so, and we didn't, no one really even warned us at all.
We were like, okay, we got the flavor down. We got samples. They're delicious. We're ready to roll.
Right.
And the next thing we know, we've got big failed productions that we lost the entire runs twice.
Yeah.
And speaking to some peers in the industry, they also had situations like this. So it's like, wait, why aren't people talking about this from jump?
Surprising.
Because a lot of people kind of stumbled.
I've in my capacity as a fund partner, we've invested in some product companies, and it's important to do sampling at different size batches, right? I mean, there are just mistakes. I think the average consumer that gets the product at the end of the day on the shelf, they kind of think it just magically appears.
Yeah.
But when you're behind the scenes, and you think about how many samples were off, or there's a lot of humans and a lot of machines in the between the idea and the initial prototype sample, and then what sits on the shelf. And people think it's really easy, but you have to kind of budget or find the money to deal with those issues, right?
Totally.
And find the people. Finding the people.
And even sourcing the ingredients.
Right.
I mean, it's just every step of the way, it's a lot of work.
So do you all have to source your ingredients yourselves, or do you, in the CPG, we have a investment company called Beast that does hair, shampoo, all kinds of products. Some formulators will get all your raw stuff for you. I imagine it's the same in beverages.
Yeah, they gave us the contact list of people to reach out to, but we had to then do that from there. But yes, but they did suggest.
So y'all do source it yourselves.
But we do. We buy it all ourselves, source it all ourselves, arrange the freight ourselves.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're seeing soup to nuts, really.
Find the production facilities ourselves. Yeah. Okay. It's a lot.
That's great. Well, that must have taken a lot of time and energy. And did you just kind of figure it out, or did you have people to help you?
Oh, we think my fingers are crossed right now. We think we have figured it out now.
And we've had people help us.
And now,
But at first, we did not figure it out, and like I said, threw away thousands of gallons of
and
product.
Thousands of dollars. So we're very fortunate that our investors really believed in us and believed in the product, and every step we were making was closer. We got closer to they knew we were on the right track and had trust in us. So that's been
and they had enough experience that they understood that the odds of our getting it right the first time were close to zero, and so they were not at all surprised when round one failed, and they weren't overwhelmingly upset or surprised when round two or when a subsequent round failed, as long as they could see and believe that we were learning and understanding what was driving those failures and had plans in place to fix them, and then could demonstrate those fixes. They just wanted, like anyone, they want to see that track record and they want to see that trajectory moving in the right direction. But I could imagine a less sophisticated early investor could have been very spooked early on, and that could have been the end of it.
Yeah. And what you guys mentioned a little bit about your backgrounds before. Aimée, what did you do before Mockley? What were you doing in New York when you all met?
In New York, I was a design director designing men's ties.
Oh, cool.
So for Tommy Hilfiger was the biggest brand I worked on.
Okay.
And express retail stores for men.
Very cool.
So, it was a great experience in terms of, like I was saying, with network, worked with a lot of Chinese facilities in terms of the mills, worked with a lot of Italians. They were all doing the silk at the time. And so got to go to Europe a couple times a year to Lake Como, and
nice.
Didn't appreciate it enough. Now I would very much appreciate that.
You mean Mockley's not covering the trips?
No,
Like, am I right?
not yet. Got to get some business there. And then when we came back to New Orleans in 2016, there was this nail salon that I went to in New York regularly called Paint Box, which had this really cool design approach to nails. And having this design background in ties, I was like, oh, I want to do this. And I found a partner, and we opened up Painted on Magazine Street. And
cool.
COVID just destroyed us. And I decided after that, wasn't going to put another dollar into it. So as soon as that PPP money was out, we were like, peace out.
Yep. Well, I mean, obviously that caused a lot of disruptions, but at the same time, I guess you were formulating.
Exactly. And we had this idea of cooking already. So I think that really helped me be able to be like, let's close this down and free up the brain space to work on something that actually we could see way more opportunity, obviously.
I think it's a great way to look at it because there's a lot of stuff in life you can't control. And so many of the entrepreneurs I've worked with over the years, and in some cases, myself, some of these things that change in the world that cause changes are the very things you need to take the first step in these businesses. Like if you were still devoting all your time and energy to Painted, you probably put something like this on the back burner until some other point, and maybe you never do it. But it's it's very cool that this has led to this.
Yeah.
And Tarik, I think have you always had your own agency, or did you work for other agencies?
No, I launched Pure in New York in 2010, and prior to that, I had worked at the large global agencies out of New York. Ultimately, I was the chief digital officer globally for Young and Rubicam up there. Cool. But I've been in advertising almost all of my professional life.
So, like we were talking, I was at a really big Silicon Valley-based law firm that focused on venture capital in Palo Alto. And, moving to start my own firm was one of those kinds of moments where it was nerve-wracking. It was very hard. When I got to New Orleans, there was really no one here that knew much about venture capital at all. And so I was fortunate enough to find a bunch of really cool companies, help them through. But, it is a different world, leaving a giant agency, starting your own practice of any kind. What was that like for you, that step? That has to be a big transition itself.
It was, yes, it was. It was very liberating. It was exciting. It was probably a little overdue by the time I ended up doing it. I had spent probably 20 years working my way up in the big agencies in New York. And I think, like I'm sure you experienced at the big law firm, there's so many great things about being in those companies, just, learning so much about the practice and the fundamentals of advertising, and also, creating some credibility so that when I did go out on my own, I was able to bring with me all of that experience and that sort of reputational equity, if you will, but I was freed up from the bureaucracy and the politics, and that made a big difference personally and psychologically.
Do you think, and Aimée, you're with a big company too. When you think back to those days, because there's so many people I think that are at big companies that want to start a thing, either a new product company or or a services business or something. My feeling on it is that there is no perfect time ever.
No.
Right? It's just there are things that happen, and sometimes you either just get fed up with something or you need a change personally for growth or something. But I don't know if you guys agree with that. If it just kind of happens organically, and sometimes you're like, I just need to do this for whatever reason. There's a drive.
Yeah. No, the time that Tarik was starting his agency, we were pregnant, and I was like, how in the hell are we going to do this? We're about to have a baby, and now you're starting an agency. And so to your point, I don't think there is a perfect time. And then one thing that was really nice, though, is I was working for a big corporation at the time. So while my salary was, not enough to support our entire lifestyle, but, we did have a foundation, and we had amazing healthcare. So all 6 of us, including my stepdaughters, were able to be on my healthcare, which frees up a lot for people as they're starting a new company. I mean, it's, healthcare is not something you get until you're a few years in, I think, for most people. So that was kind of good luck and good timing of that, just having me at this really huge global company.
So together you were able to make it happen.
Exactly.
And that's another thing that we were talking about before. But behind every entrepreneurial journey, there's some amount of people that are all supporting one another to enable it, make it possible. In my case, it was, my grandmother, who was a very tough customer to please, and I think was proud that I was at big law firms historically, but I just couldn't do it anymore. No one believed really in the startup scene here that there would be investors or good companies. I did, and once I got a taste of it in Silicon Valley, my ideal dream world was I'd come back home and be able to do this kind of stuff here. And a lot of people said that wasn't possible, and but it was, and there was no good time to do it. But it just kind of happened, right, in a similar fashion. But I don't think I could have taken that step without some people supporting me and encouraging me in that case. I didn't have a lot of financial responsibilities at that point, but at the same time, the encouragement alone, not just the money, is needed to get any of this done. So that's crazy. And then, how did you guys end up? What was the deciding factor to come back to, in your case, home to New Orleans? I guess Aimée had brought you down a bunch of times, Tarik, I'm sure.
Never in summer.
She kept it secret, just jazz fest and
once
fall.
in summer, actually. It was surprising when we got here
That's
on July 5th.
That's actually kind of true.
And,
we went to the beach in summer, so I tricked you. Yeah, I definitely did.
Husbands and wives, a lot of people talk about, like, what economic incentives can we need to keep sending, Louisiana people out to the world to get their spouses to come back. It's like,
it's true. It could be its own program.
There's some billion-dollar startups that have exited where I think that's one of the driving reasons the spouse was from Louisiana. So,
well, we hope to add to that list eventually.
Yeah, that's right. That's great. And then, what are some similarities and differences between, in your case, Tarik, having an agency, like a services type business, versus a product type business? What would have been, because again, I think there's a lot of people out there that may, through their trades, pick up stuff. But
that's really interesting. I haven't really thought about that, but what comes to my mind right off the bat is the difference in product and sales. And so as an ad agency and as an ad agency owner, if I can have a conversation with somebody, I've got a reasonable shot at creating the right sounding and looking and feeling package to sell, right? Whereas with Mockley, it is or it isn't. I mean, it is what it is. There's no conversation I can have really after they crack it open and taste it. If they're not like blown away and sort of want it and get it, that conversation is done. And then secondly, the major difference between the two from a business standpoint that I see is that on the one hand, at the agency, I spend so much of my time working with and thinking about the people at the agency, right? And they are the means of delivery. They are the product that we are selling or the service that we're selling. As they go, so do we go. Whereas at Mockley, obviously people are hugely important. Aimée's alluded to that in terms of our network and whatnot, but the production of the actual product is something that we don't have anything to think about or care about at the ad agency. And so, having to focus so much on the product itself is a huge difference.
That's great. And you were kind of in product design.
Yes.
So is this similar to?
Yeah, I definitely have kind of, led that, just having had to do that before, take something and create a tie out of it. Yeah. That starts as just a little bitty piece of fabric this big. So that is more familiar to me, having, already actually created a product that was then sold to retailers. So, it is not unsimilar. There's been quite a few times that I've looked at Tarik. I was like, okay, I remember this now. This is like this, how we did that. And, so that's been helpful. The one thing I will say in terms of like the service versus this actual product is the relationship with the distributors. That has been something that has been really interesting and different from my fashion background. Is that there was a middleman here.
Right.
Fashion background, we sold directly to Macy's. We sold directly to Dillard's. We had our own relationship, our own sales. But in this, you oftentimes don't sell directly to Rouse's, your distributor does. So that's been something that we're really learning a lot about, and, kind of understanding how much do we push, how much do we pull, how much do we step back and let them do it. That's been really an interesting dynamic that's different, I think, from pretty much any business out there, having this kind of distribution level.
Yeah, I know in the in the consumer products like soap shampoo world, there are a lot of brokers.
Yes,
I'm sure.
Yes. So we haven't got into that yet, but
so
but I
you
think
just
it's
kind of
similar.
source a distributor
Yeah.
locally here, testing it out, getting good data, and then you'll go from there once you've, I guess, demonstrated the success that you want to see in the stores.
Yeah, and we just started with a new distributor in Georgia, so United Distribution. Yep, that's been huge, and they've just been at it for a few weeks and opened up, like 15 different accounts in these past 2 weeks, and so we're really excited and just can't wait to see where that goes. And starting in Atlanta, so
it's a big market.
I would say one, along the lines of Aimée's being able to bring some of that production experience that she had to Mockley. One happy coincidence is that, I've got this ad agency as well in the sort of marketing and advertising background. And so that's been one place where it's been really gratifying to finally deploy our talents to our product as opposed to somebody else's product.
Something else once.
Yeah, exactly. So we've helped lots of other brands along the way sell more of their whatever it is, coffee or cold brew or whatnot, to be able, to turn our talent and our resources to, the product that Aimée and I are doing has been rewarding and also, I think, distinguishing. I think, one of the pieces of feedback we get when we introduce Mockley around is that on arrival, it just presents very well, and so that's been handy.
It's a beautiful, beautiful can, and then when it's in the glass over ice, it's just I don't know if I think I don't know if I've had all the flavors, but the colors are unbelievable. I think one's like a pomegranate.
Yep.
That one's just gorgeous.
That's your favorite?
That's probably my favorite.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I love them all. And you guys have talked a little bit about your investors. It sounds like you really lucked out getting, both mentorship and the patience of being a good investor, and investment. It sounds like, having investors in a business of yours and dealing with them directly is a new thing. So how, I think I know from working with you guys on investment paperwork and stuff like that, the way you approach it is very thoughtful. And it seems like you go, you guys really talk back and forth. There's a dialogue between the investors and yourselves, which again, I think, getting back to the idea of trust being a fundamental component of the relationship, I'd love to just know how you got the investment. Since you already knew someone in their capacity before, was it scary to ask them for money at that point? Tell people what this was like. I mean, because there are so many people out there that are like, have this situation, but I think they are afraid to go to that next step.
It was terrifying. In fact, I've been working with our lead investor for over 25 years and have become friends with him, and our families are friends, and he's very much a mentor for me and a sort of a business strategy, sort of one of those people that I always run the big questions by, even if it's just a big life question. This is somebody that I've come to rely on so greatly, and the last thing in the world I would want to do is jeopardize that relationship. Like there's no investment, there's no amount of money that is worth what he brings to me and to my life and our life, just from a human and personal relationship basis. So I had made it a point throughout the years to never actually ask him for money, ever. And I probably wouldn't have this time. He just said, I think this is an interesting idea and I'd be interested in investing in it. And that was the difference. And so that felt like enough of a safe place, I guess, to sort of go once he opened that door. But I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have ever said, "Hey, we've got this idea. We could use some money. Would you consider investing it?" I don't think I would have ever done that.
Yeah. And you mentioned, the patience with some of the issues. Now there's two approaches a founder can take to having business issues come up. One is just kind of not say anything about it and try to find alternatives and come back and present the good picture. The other is to say, this got messed up.
Oh yeah. No, we took it on our chin every time. Just, yeah.
Well, I think I think that speaks to the nature of the relationship that preceded the investment too. I mean, this is somebody I would not lie to or hide something from.
But I also think just in general speaks to our just integrity level
that's true
as
too.
well. And
Yes,
I'm not going to take money from someone and not give them the whole story.
That's true. I mean, I said that over and over again.
That's, that's not going to be, we're not hiding things,
Right.
Yeah.
Especially,
true.
and I think that's something that also comes from a place of trust within yourself that I do know what I'm doing. I did have a misstep. I can see clearly what I did wrong here. I'm upset that I didn't see it, but sometimes you can't see it till you experience it. And that's just the way it is. And, just owning it and then moving on as graciously as you can, I think.
Yeah. No, I think it's crucial. I think, I've been on every side of this now. I've helped companies like yours in the investment process. I've raised, with partners, over 20 million for a fund. I've been in the kind of like active board member role where I'm hoping to help companies and hope that they want to come to me when they have an issue as opposed to, sweep it under the rug. And I think there's kind of two sets of founders out there emerging. And like one are the kind of founders that it's kind of like a pitch culture. Like there's a lot of shark tankiness. We go through these events and we just kind of treat investors as someone who gives us money for having given them a good pitch, and then that's the end of it. And we'll see them later, and they're not really to bother me in my business. I've done my thing of getting them in, and that's it. Now I just give them updates.
Right.
And that founder, I've seen founders kind of blow the money. The company goes away, and their email is like, "Sorry, we all learned. This was a great learning experience. Thanks." And then there's another set that seems to intuitively understand that if you're going to let somebody into your business, and if that person is interested in investing in your business, it's not just that they're trying to give you money and say, and maybe there's some, they're like, here's some money, have fun with it, do whatever. But I think the relationship focused people are, oftentimes looking for, they want you to go to them when something happens, right? They want it. They don't want to know about it. They want to know about it in real time when something's going bad. If something's going great, I think they usually want to know too. They want to celebrate with you, right?
Totally. And it's something that it's going to be our first time going outside of just this really, amazing relationship of 20 something years. And, I think that there is, I personally have a little bit of fear about that of like, who does anyone else want us? Is anyone else interested? Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you want to do this with me? That's one element that gives me a little bit of anxiety. And then the other element is like, but who am I taking money from? Like, I want to be absolutely, as clear as you can, kind of what I'd be getting into with this other person, because I think that it's going to be really hard for Tarik and I to approach this as transactional. I think it's always going to feel a little bit more than that for us. And I think us being aware of that as we kind of go into this next seed round is just something that we can spend probably a little bit more time just talking out and seeing where we land together on that.
I think
if you have any advice on that, that'd be, I'd love to hear it.
I do. And I very much have tried to be purposeful about that in my own life with clients or my own investors or whoever. It's got to be relationship based, because most of this stuff is pretty long term. It's not like an instant, flip of a business. And if you approach it in a transactional manner, I think you often lose credibility at the very least, if not, burn opportunities for long-term relationships. And if I know that I just couldn't approach people that have given me money always in pitch mode, where it's going well, I want to celebrate. But I've learned doing this long enough that even the wins, you have to keep that even keel, because the highs are super high and the lows are super low. So, you can't go too nuts either way. When things go wrong, the people that have given you money should be your best source of advice and inspiration. It doesn't mean that you have to let them run your company. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think you want to keep them up to date, informed, and that means they'll be more likely to support you on a long-term basis. So you guys have a board, right? And is that a new thing, or how do we have it set up for? I forget how you have it.
We don't have a board.
No.
I mean, Aimée and I are the two board
Oh,
members.
you're the directors. Your investors are not on the board at this
Not at
point.
this time.
But it sounds like essentially
we use them as a board.
operate.
I think we use them as a board without it being formally. I mean,
Yeah, which is
So,
great. That means
yeah.
you're kind of prepared. So, once you start getting those big checks, somebody will probably want a board seat. It might be a little bit more formal.
For sure.
Right.
So it sounds like you're
Well,
ready
as you
for that
know,
opportunity.
we're set up to have a board.
You
Thanks
created
to
our
your
documents.
Technically, you do have a board. but
Yeah.
you're not the documents.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, what do you see? Where do you see all this going? And in the next few years, what's your and tell me a little bit about what you hope to get.
Well, we see it happening really fast right now. So we are definitely in acceleration mode. We just, over the past 2 days, all of a sudden now at Whole Foods here in Arabella, there's an NA section with one of our competitors, Mingle canned mocktails.
Awesome.
We definitely think we taste much better and look much better than Mingle. But that is, to me, like, I see that, I get excited. And I'm like, okay, game on. This is starting to be more mainstream, which we saw coming. How are we going to, really get ourselves out there and get known so that we can get some of this, more national exposure at the regional level? That's kind of where I am and how I
It
feel.
feels to me, it feels to us like we are one of the leaders in a space that may grow much larger. We don't know for sure that ready-to-drink mocktails are going to be a big category. It's certainly a bigger category than it was a year ago, and it's a lot bigger than it was 2 years ago. So we feel like we're positioned among a relatively small group of players. We're positioned well, very well. And now it's sort of a question of the extent to which this wave really builds. That we have no control over to a certain extent, right? I mean, the trends, the data, the noise on this topic is all very favorable. You do a search, you start looking about dry January and sober curiosity and changing alcohol consumption patterns, and you read all that and you go, wow, this is definitely going to happen. And, as you know, there's no such thing as definitely going to happen in a new and emerging category. But to the extent that it does happen, what we're really focused on is maintaining our leadership position in our space. And so that just requires a huge amount of paddling, huge. It's just relentless to stay atop our sector and, our categories and grow the distribution, grow trial. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go to the grocery store today and get some bread, some cheese, some meat, and a ready-to-drink mocktail, right? And so the effort required to introduce this new product and this new category to people is significant.
Right.
And that's where we're focused.
Yeah, and the capital required. I mean,
Yeah.
we're definitely crossing over into the lane now where, for somebody in Idaho to have heard of that costs a lot of money. And, for New York City to really understand Mockley, that's going to cost a whole lot of money. And so we're kind of going a little bit kind of peeking through our hands, how much do we really need? What do we really need to do here? And, where do we spend this? It's really a complex kind of thought process that I think is something
Right.
that we're really trying to understand and talk to as many educated people as we possibly can who've been through this before to kind of guide us. Cause, we feel we really don't want to misstep now. We've had a couple, we understand where those came from, but now we feel like we have enough information and enough, advisory that we feel more confident in this next step.
Yeah. Well, it seems like the category is, the good news as I think about the category, as I hear you guys talk about it. And by the way, you sound like you've really done your homework and thought this through. But the good news is, it sounds like yourself. And I think I'm like this. There are a lot of times, like I think a lot more people there are a lot of people clearly drinking more post pandemic, but I think there are probably a lot of people too. There are so many more people into health and fitness, for example, or, whatever on different kinds of diets. And I think there's like an innate demand by the consumer for this category, probably. That's what I think. I don't know if New Orleans has any mocktail bars. It seems like most bars have some, or most higher end bars.
There's a couple that I've heard of, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I think,
but they're very small.
Yeah, I think that concept more and more is going to be appealing to people. I mean, you even hear about Vegas, especially with other substances becoming legal, the alcohol is just taking a backseat to a lot of people's preferences. So to me, it sounds like this will be part of that alternative to alcohol trend, if nothing else. I mean,
I think that's the bet.
Yeah.
At this point, we've spent the last 2 years working incredibly hard to put ourselves in position, and I feel like we are in position. And now, but in order to stay in position, like that requires manpower and a lot. Like I said, feels like a lot of paddling. Just to stay out there.
And just one thing I wanted to add, that, Tarik and I have really made a conscious decision from jump in starting Mockley that we really wanted to be accessible. And then that, that's kind of a multi-tiered thing as well. But one element, which I'll let him speak to, is, a lot of the people that are doing what we're doing is a non-alcoholic version of a Negroni, non-alcoholic version of Moscow Mule, that kind of thing. And there is this segment of people who are, in sobriety, in recovery, and they don't want it to taste like booze and have it, be anything.
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, Aimée and I are in the category of people who like things that taste good. And so, our first experience with tasting, going through the gambit and tasting some of these non-alcoholic, booze-free versions of existing cocktails was, as somebody kindly put it, very challenging on the palate. Right. But secondly, as a non-drinker, I don't drink non-alcoholic beer. You know what I mean? Like that's right. And I'm not interested in drinking non-alcoholic gin and tonics. Like,
I think it's a mistake fundamentally. I have a vegan in my family, and there's a lot of in the meat substitute thing.
Right.
To me, is the wrong method.
They're phony.
When you have a non-vegan person going to eat some of these products and they're calling it, chicken fingers, but it's tofu, I think you're setting people up for a mismatch of expectation and reality.
Totally. So
to me, I love that. I can't imagine drinking like the non-alcoholic version of a vodka soda. I think that sounds gross to me. But what I'm looking for as an alternative, because I still drink alcohol, but most of the time I just don't want to have the effects of alcohol,
totally,
like extra sugar or whatever, and I want something that has that invigorating thing. I think there's a lot of people like that. They don't want, you drink water all day if you're trying to stay in shape. You kind of want sometimes like a little bit something extra,
right?
But that's not a sugary soda, not booze.
Exactly.
I think that's the category you guys seem to.
We definitely have tried
Agreed.
to land in that sweet spot. But it is, it is something that a lot of the BevNet and the PR people, they're definitely kind of more looking at the bitter and burn right now. And, so I think that we're going to get a little more vocal with just letting them know that, that there is a whole segment of people that can't really participate in that. And so, kind of making something that for everybody is kind of, what we thought would be really a good thing.
And we think BevNet is a great publication.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, of course.
Just to be very smart people.
Well, I can already see your campaign maybe developing. Like, I don't think anybody wants to be. I won't name the non-alcoholic beer, but there are non-alcoholic beers that are. It's almost pejorative, and why would somebody want to be that of the liquor world? Right. It doesn't make sense to me. But obviously, there's some market for it.
No, NA beer's the fastest growing non-alc segment by a lot.
Really?
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
know that.
Oh, yeah.
Within non-alc, the vast percentage of non-alc sales are non-alc beer.
It's also because it's been around though,
And they've
for
done a
years
great
and years
job.
and years.
You know, they've just, Athletic and others have done an amazing job of creating good tasting beer that doesn't have alcohol in it. I've not heard the same about spirits yet. I'm sure that I know people are working on it, whatnot. But anyway, once again, that's not what we're up to. Like that's there's a growing emphasis on alcohol-free alternatives that are delicious and interesting beverages on their own right, and that's what we are.
Awesome. Well, anything else you guys want to get into? This has been so fascinating. I really have loved hearing y'all's journey, and it's been a pleasure, working with you guys to date. And I'm sure there's much more good things to come. But,
Here's hoping.
Yeah. Well, congrats. Everybody pick up Mockley. It's drinkmockley.com.
Yep.
It is.
And we're also on Amazon Prime.
Awesome. Okay. Get your subscriptions going.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, Mark.
All right. Bye.